Well, I'd better get into this right away without any preamble, otherwise, knowing me, it'll be all preamble and very little reading of this. I thought it might be a good idea, and to be honest, I don't know why I've never done it before, to read out this comment and reply verbally, vocally, because I am long winded, both when I am talking and when I'm writing. And I just thought I will never be able to write a proper reply because I'll be going back paragraph by paragraph. Now, I really appreciate long messages like this, but I just thought it might be a nice thing. Don't know why I've not done it before, as I say, to just reply by video. It's there's definitely something more additional, more personal, more real about not only having or being able to hear somebody's voice, but hearing your own text being read back, for me anyway, makes things much more real. So anyway, as I say, no preamble, or that was a little bit, no more than that. Let's get on with it. So this is from a recent viewer of the channel who commented on a live stream that I had with JC back on Christmas Eve. And in fact, it's called the Christmas Eve live stream of 2022. And I'm going to guess he has come to the channel because he liked some of JC's comments, which he saw in some other video, not one of mine, I presume. No, not just I presume, pretty much certainly not. Right, so this person called Think of Something Cooler. So I know what was going on there in their minds when they were trying to think of a username when they were signing up. Anyway, he says, "Hello again, what a well-informed and expressed comment." Well, we won't go back to whatever that was. Maybe another time, but I always say that. Anyway, he says, "Like you, I felt a sense of betrayal for not learning certain things, even though I fancied myself a skeptic. And also really thought," well, and there's a sort of, maybe I'll take that as a perturbed smiley. "I did too. Not skeptical enough, maybe. Not critically thinking enough. Anyway, I'll try not to go off on tangents. And also really sought out info through first-person accounts." This person has really done their homework. I'm going to just say very quickly, I didn't think that I had much to learn from old people because I thought that they weren't with it. Didn't know what was what, just like Grandpa Simpson. Anyway, I'd love to respond to this at length right now, but as I said, my phone is being wonky, so I need to take care of business first before it shuts down again. Lol. I shall return. Presumably they did, or not presumably. Evidently they did. And I'm not criticizing them. As I say, I am very, very long-winded. And anyway, I really appreciate somebody who not only takes the time to write a comment, but I really appreciate reading comments and getting them. Now, also, I fear I forgot to special type the word for, and I think that is drugs. I'm not sure if that's what I suspected was what set it off, but of course, YouTube always likes to leave us guessing. That's the new system. We'll never tell you what the rules are. Even if we do, they're always changeable. When you make a transgression, we're not going to tell you what rule you transgressed so that you won't be able to mount a defense. Because even though we make the rules and change them as we go, we don't even want you knowing what the rules of the game are, so that you can't then later point out that we're not playing by our own rules, even though, of course, that's what we don't do. That's the paradigm we have, so that's what YouTube have. And they state that. They state that they don't want people knowing what the things are you're not supposed to say, otherwise they would just easily avoid saying those things. It's reason 1001 why nobody should be participating in this society whatsoever. And anytime any of you guys are ready to completely divest yourselves of everything, and I mean put the phones down, switch off the internet, switch off electrical power, everything, I'm happy now then, to sort of say, right, lads, out into the streets and let's see who survives. I'm not saying I'm a tough guy. I'm just sort of saying, like, okay, do we want to go back to the Stone Age? Because this is what you get if you're going to use any technology to just try to steal and cheat and subjugate and oppress your fellow citizens, or man, if you like. Now, I said I wouldn't go off on tangents. And that's at least one that tends to set off the bells. Well, look, it could have been anything, as I say. Right. Speaking of various point of views and what different people focused on, lived through after World War II, have you watched? I'm just going to get on with the comment here. We'll come back to that. Cinema Paradiso. And I'm going to say now, for all these movies or TV series or documentaries that you've listed, I don't think I've seen any of them. And if I have, I think I've only seen bits of them while they're on TV. Maybe caught the end of one or two. Let's just get on with it anyway. Cinema Paradiso, which unsurprisingly translates as Paradise Cinema. But I looked it up on Wikipedia because, as I say, I haven't seen it. And in the Italian version of the film, or maybe it's just, I don't know whether it's dubbed or whatever, but the Italian version of the film, if it was a remake, or sorry, if the US version was a remake or English version was a remake, it's called Nuovo Cinema Paradiso. So it's New Paradise Cinema. Anyway, I'll read out the blurb, which I looked up on Wikipedia. So here it is. Is a 1988 coming-of-age drama written and directed by Giuseppe Tornatore. Is that Tornado? Set in a small Sicilian town, the film centres on the friendship. I don't know why I'm trying to particularly pronounce that with a D, and I'm still not getting it. Friendship between a young boy and an aging projectionist who works at the titular movie theatre. Okay, I had a bit of a teenage laugh there, but it means the movie theatre, as if you didn't know, named for the title of the movie. This Italian-French co-production stars Philippe Noiret. Don't translate that too literally into English. Jacques Perrin, Leopoldo Trieste. Trieste sounds like very sad to me, as in crying. Is that what it means? Or has it got something to do with tripartite? Anyway, Marco, this is me going off on tangents, and I said I wouldn't. Marco Leonardi, Agnese Nano, and Salvatore Caschio. The film score was composed by Ennio Morricone. I shouldn't be trying to Italianize people's names. And his son Andrea. I said I wouldn't do that. Marking the beginning of a collaboration between Tornatore and Morricone. What the hell am I doing here? That lasted until Morricone's death on 6th of July 2020. Credited with revitalizing Italy's film industry, Cinema Paradiso has been cited as one of the greatest films of all time. Wow. It was a commercial success and won 7 awards, including the Academy Award for Foreign Language Film and Cannes Film Festival's Grand Prix. It was nominated for 11 BAFTA awards and won 5, including Best Actor for Philippe Noiret, or maybe it's just Noiret, Best Supporting Actor for Salvatore Caschio, and Best Original Screenplay and Best Foreign Language Film. All right. Plot. Better read out a bit of this now. Good God, this is going to be long unless I'm careful. In 1988, Rome, Salvatore De Vita, a famous film director, returns home late one evening where his girlfriend sleepily tells him that his mother called to say someone named Alfredo has died. Salvatore shies from committed relationships and has not been to his home village of Giancaldo, Sicily, in 30 years. As his girlfriend asks him who Alfredo was, Salvatore is not able to fall asleep and flashes back to his childhood. A few years after World War II, 8-year-old Salvatore is the mischievous, intelligent son of a war widow nicknamed Toto. He discovers a love for films and spends every free moment at the local movie house, named Cinema Paradiso. Although they initially start off on tense terms, he develops a friendship with middle-aged projectionist Alfredo, who often lets him watch movies from the projection booth. During the shows, the audience can be heard booing because there are missing sections, causing the films to suddenly jump, bypassing scenes with romantic kisses or embraces. The local priest, owner of the cinema, had ordered these sections to be censored, and the deleted scenes are cut from film reels by Alfredo and piled on the projection room floor, where, not just the cutting room floor, where Alfredo keeps them until he can splice them back in for the film to be sent to the next town. Right, I'm going to skip to the end, and it says Salvatore comes back to Rome, watches Alfredo as real, which he has put back together, and discovers it comprises all the romantic scenes that the priest had ordered Alfredo to cut from the movies. Alfredo had spliced the sequences together to form a single unreduced film of aching desire and lustful frenzy. In the final scenes, Salvatore makes peace with his past with tears in his eyes. Well, I can see already, without having seen the film, that you can see this two ways. In the context of now, you can see it as what they have in there is transgender story hour, and they'd be crying that we're splicing that from movies that children need to see. Whereas back then, people would have seen it as, oh yeah, in the context of Nazis were bad and they censored things, and also it's bad in our day to have censorship as well. Why don't we ever learn from history? Which is sort of like a normie, or would have been certainly the normie take back then. Whereas these days, you'd get plenty of Democrats, leftists, even liberals, former liberals saying, now that we're corporatists and we're in the driving seat, we want to censor all the people who we even presume disagree with us. So censorship is a double-edged sword. And looking back on what I know now, maybe you too, you might sort of say this was the thin end of the wedge, where they soften up your cognitive skills, or cognitive mind rather, with the sentimentality of old Sicily and old and young men returning to the place of their, I'll say, blushful rather than lustful youth. Yeah, it's tough to say. Tough to say. And a lot of people I know who, these days would sort of say, actually, I do agree with censorship. I agree with censoring a lot of stuff. Because otherwise you have these people saying, but why? What's wrong with just a bit of pole dancing and it's all just a bit of fun? Just this drag, it's just like Widow Twanky. It's just like, plays, Shakespearean plays where the man would play the role of the woman. It's just a bit of fun. It's just like pantomime in Britain, in English tradition, just a bit of Christmas fun. It all has to do with the intent behind it, right? I said I wouldn't go off on tangents, and I can't afford to. Let's get on to the next one. Take a quick drink of water. Right, speaking of which, can't help it but get into ye oldie World War Deuxième, I'll say, because look, even saying that, strikes off the the thing. I don't need to remind you. Patton. This is a fantastic, back to the comment here now. I forgot to say, I better read out what he says. She says, the bells reminded me of this one. This is Cinema Paradiso. The bells reminded me of this one because the priest would ring a bell while watching movies and the projectionist would flag the scenes and edit them out. Takes place in post-World War Sicily, which was very important for the story of. And then ... or ellipsis, which I presume he's saying is onto Patton. Maybe we would have saved ourselves some time if I'd only stuck to the script here instead of going to Wikipedia and reading out at length. I was going to say ad nauseum. Hopefully not quite. Right, Patton. This is a fantastic, though approved, in quotes, film. Very enjoyable and shows how strategically he was often at odds with both the US and the UK. And wanted to directly countermand, or maybe did countermand, Eisenhower. Was that the story of history that maybe wasn't even told to us at the time? I don't know. A documentary was recently released that shows how he said he was going to do a tour of Europe and America. He was extremely unhappy with the way things shaped up afterwards. Yes, I'm familiar with that. And I would imagine that most, if not all people listening to this are familiar with that idea, at least anyway. Even if they haven't, like me, looked into it too much more than, what would be written in memes, like, just a paragraph of text under his photograph. But I, at least, I suppose I looked a bit more into it than that, and basically verified that does seem to be the case, all right. Anyway, with the way things shaped up afterwards, and felt that there were colossal mistakes made or intentional things done. Yeah, They always hide behind the mistakes were made thing. They always uh, have the plausible deniability of incompetence or lack of information. We did the best we could at the time with the information that we had, but no. I think we now know that there's not just malice of forethought, but carefully laid plans and several contingency plans, or intentional things done that covers that would not benefit the people. Shortly thereafter, he was hit by a truck. The guy survived countless battles, and yet, as you say, hit by a truck and died. It was unusual and tragic. Yes, indeed. Right, well, I think we know where we are with that anyway. Uh, and of course, we can't really discuss it too well here. A. Milne biopic. Um, Blanking on the name, but it's a sweet, if heartbreaking film about the author of Winnie the Pooh and his struggles with shell shock, which was the World War II name for, what do they call it now, really? Well, whatever syndrome or... No, it's not just that. It's... anyway, I'll stop trying to think of the word anyway, trauma or that kind of stuff. I looked it up anyway, and what's that called? It's called Goodbye, Christopher Robin. 2017 British biographical drama film about the lives of Winnie the Pooh creator A.A. Milne and his family, especially his son, Christopher Robin. So it's very poignant already, I think, when you know, or when you kind of realise, and I think I had heard this before but forgot, that, the little character in that book, that was his own son, who he wrote presumably these stories for his son so he could read to his son. And I just get the sense, I don't know why, and I think that I would have, when I was a child, I think I would have been told about a little bit of the biography of these kind of people. I get the sense that maybe his son... No, I don't know. I was going to guess that his son died, but maybe not. Maybe he grew up to talk about his father. I don't know. Anyway, it was directed by Simon Curtis and written by Frank Cottrell Boyce. Simon Curtis rings a bell. I wonder, was he anything to do with Blackadder? It says his feature films include My Week with Marilyn, Woman in Gold, and Downton Abbey. Anyway. The movie stars, and stars Donald Gleeson, right? So he's the son of Brendan Gleeson. Margot Robbie, I thought she was actually American, but no, she's Australian. I think she's worked in America for so long. Kelly MacDonald, she's Scottish, but I think famously she could put on pretty much faultless American accent. There's been lots of movies as well. I think maybe her most famous movie that she came out in was Trainspotting, from my memory. Anyway, right. Should I read out much of the plot? No, I won't. I won't, because it'll just be too long. Pink Floyd's The Wall. Back to the comment here. Okay, so I put the most enjoyable films at the top, and then we'll progress into more disturbing fare. F-A-R-E, in case you're listening, as in, I don't know, offerings. While this is heralded as a psychedelic neo-surrealist masterpiece, I believe that much of it was made this way in order to be able to publicly say things that would not be appreciated. Yeah, I bet you. I didn't realize how thoughtful and intelligent and well-spoken, I think it's Roger Waters is, especially recently, about his, what were presented to us as being a sort of a slightly impromptu speech he made imploring the UN to end, I think, the war in Ukraine or not get into it. Right, I'll move on anyway. And also being called an anti-dentite by his bandmate, whose name I don't know why, but I'm blanking on again. And I have to say, by the way, Pink Floyd were a little bit before my time. I'm a Gen Xer. But it was my father who had bought a copy of Pink Floyd, The Wall. I'm pretty sure. Oh, yes, Pink Floyd, The Wall. I'm trying to think now. He must have had two albums. Oh, what was the one with the prism, PRISM, on the front with the white light and the rainbow coming out? Um, and my favorite track on it was Money because, and I don't know if it was on all albums, but it had this incredible stereoscopic effect of the cash register and money sound going from left to right or right to left. Anyway, back to it. Um, right, would not be appreciated. This deals with being the child of a shell-shocked parent and the legacy that these wounds, which were never healed, left behind, and just how messed up everything still was. Of course, I don't agree with everything in his point of view, but I would argue that children of the 60s and 70s were most likely acutely aware that things were most definitely not resolved. And, well, I'll say I wasn't. I thought everything was done and dusted back in the 1940s, or middle of the 1940s, or by at the very least by the 50s. And anyway, all that stuff was in black and white, and most people didn't even have TVs back then anyway. So I just thought everyone back then was in ancient black and white days, in old history. All those men were dead long, long, long before I was born, because 20 years to me, or 25 years, or whatever I was, well, my attitude to it was that, I mean, it took so long, seemingly, before I was 10. When you're a kid, you're like, well, I'm 3.5 or 3 3/4, really. Basically, I'm nearly 4, that kind of way. Like, so a year was an eon. That's just the way it goes. And, the obvious explanation, which maybe isn't so obvious then, is that, from 3 to 4 is a whole 25% of your life. Whereas then when you're 40, let's say, from 39 to 40, oh God, why did I do that to myself? 2.5%, I'm going to hope. So it's a matter of proportionality. And for me to get to be 20 years old, I never even thought I'd get to be 18. I thought 16 was ancient, or I couldn't even imagine being 15 when I was 5. Kids then would have seemed like just incredibly old and tall and adults and everything. They were the kind of 15-year-old kid would be somebody who might babysit you. I don't know if really. Anyway, look, it doesn't matter. Let's move on. I should really reel myself back in if I'm going to go off on tangents. But as I say, that's a little different stairs. That's where we might deviate. I wasn't. I mean, if you're a child of the 60s, maybe you were. But another thing might be to do with geographical location. If you're in the States, things were different for people in this island that I was born on, because of the fact that we did not at least officially participate in either World War I or World War II. Sorry, maybe we did in World War I, but anyway, we didn't in World War II. And I know things were different for people in France, so I might have been insulated, literally and metaphorically, from a lot of that. Anyway, and because their parents had been through so much, they were simply too traumatized to want to deal with the anger and rebellion of their children, who, after all, at least did not have to fight in the Great War, just other wars. They were simply too traumatized to want to deal with the anger and rebellion of their children. Right, I'm trying to think now, and I'm getting a bit confused. So the people who would have fought in World War II, would their parents, if they survived, would have fought in World War I? I'm going to leave that because my mind is actually not able to process that, but I'll move on, right? Maybe it might have happened. But anyway, I'm trying to, look, mileage may vary there. Just other wars. This movie is disturbing and incredibly sad. I don't recommend it lightly. I haven't seen it. And you know what I'm going to say as well? I'm this ignorant, right? And as I say, Pink Floyd was a little bit before my time. Well, look, in the same way as so much was, really. I mean, all the music of the 60s was. Led Zeppelin, who I discovered, at some point and thought they were cool, and who else? The Doors, of course, and thought they were cool as well. I mean, that was all retro old music when I was in the 80s and 90s, Um, as I say, when I was, would I have been, I don't want to give away my exact age too much, but yeah, I would have been a teenager at some point in the 80s. And I'm trying to think, would I have been still in the 90s? I think so, yeah. I think so. So thereabouts, anyway. All that would have been considered to be, oh, you're being cool and delving back into the oldies. But Pink Floyd was something that I didn't kind of, even though I, would have listened to my father's Pink Floyd album or albums, whichever ones he had. I couldn't say that I then started listening to that when I was a teenager. I don't know why, and I don't think I was. I don't think I was aware that there was a movie. And if there was, I don't remember ever seeing it on TV. Maybe deliberately. Maybe that says something that I never saw it on TV. Maybe it wasn't put on TV. I was aware of the often went around long before the internet of the idea that Pink Floyd's The Wall. I think it was, anyway, wasn't it? If not the other album. Anyway, would getting confused now because I'm not looking up things on the fly. Would sync up, very famously with The Wizard of Oz. I'll move on. The Wind That Shakes the Barley. Okay, this one was the most difficult for me to watch. I think the boomers got a terrible reputation for just wanting to forget things. However, this film shows how even if people didn't really forget, they were forced to. I think you might find some of the methodology used in this movie eerily familiar. It's not an easy movie to find, but stars Cillian Murphy and is quite well done. Now, I'm not taking sides, but I do recommend it to people so that they can see certain methods were in place as a playbook for a very long time. Right, I'm going to say that I haven't seen, pretty sure, The Wind That Shakes the Barley. Let me look it up here. You know what? I nearly want to go back and look up Pink Floyd The Wall, but I'll leave it to later if there's time. Yeah, I'm going to say that when Cillian Murphy came out in whatever movie he came out in, not came out as whatever, just, made his debut on the screen, maybe. You have to choose your words more carefully these days, don't you? I don't know what it is, but maybe I didn't like the look of him or whatever. He didn't appeal to me in some way. It's not just that, but I sort of had an issue reaction that just didn't like him. I don't know why exactly. So maybe I avoided his films deliberately. So I don't think I've seen it. As far as I'm reading the description here, and it says, or maybe it's the initial part. It says, the film takes its title from Robert Dwyer Joyce's "The Wind That Shakes the Barley," a song set during the 1798 rebellion in Ireland. I think that's why that date stuck in my mind before. That was sort of like the first Irish rebellion, although people are familiar with, or the first famous one, people are familiar with the one in 1916 to 1922. Just very briefly say that to anybody who's been connecting historical dots, and I can almost hear JC's voice saying, yes, it was Illuminati, because I mean the norm we take, like I might have had, would be like, well, they must have been, and I think our normal history did say that they were inspired by the revolution in France, but the French Revolution, or was the storming the Bastille the same year? I'm just going to look up to see that I'm not making nonsense. Yeah, storming of the Bastille. No, I'm wrong. Storming of the Bastille was July 14th, 1789. So I had it the wrong way around. 1789, 1798. Anyway, rebellion in Ireland, 1798, and featured early in the film. The film has a small number of parallels with Walter Macon's 1964 novel, The Scorching Wind, in that both Wind movies, in that it involves two brothers in the War of Independence and Civil War, and the Civil War. Does it mean the War of Independence and the Civil War in Ireland or the United States? I wish it would have specified there. Widely praised because, look, when people talk about the War of Independence and the Civil War without naming a country, they usually mean the US, but in this context, it might be implied that it means Ireland. It won the Palme d'Or at the 2006 Cannes Film Festival. Loaches, as in Ken Loaches. Is it? Yeah, Ken Loach. A biggest box office success to date, the film did well around the world and set a record in Ireland as the highest grossing Irish-made independent film until surpassed by The Guard. County Cork, Ireland, 1920. Known as the Rebel County, by the way, as far as I remember. Damien O'Donovan, this is the plot now, is about to leave his native village to practice medicine in a London hospital. Meanwhile, his brother Teddy commands the local flying column of the Irish Republican Army. After a hurling match, and by the way, this would have been in the era of post-World War I, when the Black and Tans, in other words, a lot of, not only could have been shell-shocked World War I British, English veterans who didn't probably like Irish people, but maybe even deranged prisoners and maybe war criminals or people who'd, fragged people or committed war crimes of one sort or another, maybe against their own people. So those kind of people were hand selected to go over there because the British definitely wanted there to be animosity at the very least, and they wanted there to be incidents. This is how I came to realize things became provoked. You put the right people in the right areas together, and the outcomes that they calculate to happen, or they not only hope will happen, but they sort of anticipate will happen, do. And in Cork, a lot of these sort of, what would they be termed as now? Maybe civil rights outrages or overbearing police force, militarized police force type things, overreach and overextension, and taking the law into their own hands. The police, not following due process, heavy-handed, that kind of thing, to say the least, would have happened there. So a lot of the insurgency would have come out of that, tit for tat type things, Anyway, meanwhile, his brother Teddy commands the local flying columns of the Irish Republican Army, IRA in other words, which is often funny to hear about Americans talk about their IRA or their IRA, After a hurling, when they mean their, what does it mean? Is it their pension? No, it's Inflation Reduction Act. No, it's an account set up at a financial institution that allows individuals to save for retirement. Okay, I'm going to say I was kind of vaguely right there. Okay, see me in tangents. Right, I better just quickly read a bit of this. Damien witnesses the summary execution of his friend Micheál O'Sullivan, that's Michael O'Sullivan, by British Black and Tans for, I could have just read on, couldn't I? But refusing to say his name in English. Right, so there you are, right? And that was a big thing back then, and I am told that my grandparents, at least on my, or no, it must be great-grandparents on my mother's side, refused to, on the British census, or would have been like, just whatever, what would we call the British Isles or whatever, United Kingdom, refused to put their names in English on the census. So they put their names like, Micheál O'Sullivan instead of Michael O'Sullivan. Sorry, Micheál O'Sullivan. Sullivan. It just occurs to me now that Sullivan literally translates as one-eyed. I think that's maybe what it means. Sul is eye and a wine is one, but it's not quite spelt the right way. spelled with a BH instead of an MH. So a one. I mean, so it could be like Awan without the A. Fada. Fada makes the letter long or the vowel longer. So without that, it could be like river. River eye or eye on the river, maybe. Oh, it doesn't matter. Flowing eye, doesn't matter. I better move on. See, I have a tendency to just, and then I'd be another hour looking at that, if I wasn't recording something. Right, although shaken, Damien rebuffs his friends, like shaken because of being beaten by being executed and witnessing this. As he is leaving town, Damien witnesses the British Army vainly trying to intimidate a railway personnel for refusing to permit the troops to board. In response, Damien decides to stay and is sworn into Teddy's IRA brigade. Right, well, without going any further into it now, the IRA then were obviously justifiable. Even if you're British, you could sort of say, well, look, if you're being, in whatever word you want to sort of say, persecuted, oppressed, whatever, by people certainly who you might consider to be a foreign agency, whether it's a police force or an army or whatever you want to consider the Black and Tans to be, or auxiliary police force or paramilitarized police force, or basically like a auxiliary army of the British forces. Well, anybody could sort of say, yeah, you can fight back or whatever, fight fire with fire, fight an asymmetrical war, so that if these people are official with guns and uniformed to some extent, and you don't, and you're not as organized, then you have guerrilla tactics. So that seems to be all objectively fair then. Whereas from the let's say 1980s onwards, I don't know about the 60s for sure whether you could say one thing or another, but from the 1980s onwards, and bombing on the British mainland, shopping centres and pubs in London and that kind of thing, bars in London, that is at the very least not the same thing, not only not as justifiable. I mean, I would say not justifiable, but look, turns out now that it probably was MI5 anyway doing this sort of stuff. At the very least, infiltrating and fomenting and encouraging people to do stuff like that, just as we know now that the CIA or the ATF or the FBI or whoever foments, instigates certain things too, maybe even carries things out directly themselves, and then has a patsy ready to go who's been taking pharmaceuticals. Right, I better move on because, right, for several reasons, for time and for other reasons. So I'm saying that in regards to you saying that you're not taking sides, because I think a lot of people might think they might offend me. I don't think that I could be offended by anything you might say about Ireland or anything to do with its history or culture or whatever. What else do I want to say? Yeah, I just want to be objective in all things anyway. So in case you're saying that because you don't want to offend me, don't worry and have at it next time if you'd like to expand on that. Now, he says, if that's too difficult to stomach, I recommend season 1 of Peaky Blinders. I'm going to say I haven't seen that either, although I'm aware that it was very popular. I have to say, I don't see Cillian Murphy as being like, a sort of a cool guy or a cockney or any of that sort of stuff. I'm vaguely aware of what the movies or the TV series is about. Maybe someday I'll watch it, who knows. But I fear the methodology of forcing forgetfulness gets overshadowed by the human drama and intrigue in this series. It is addressed, though. Look, because I spent so long on The Wind That Shakes the Barley, I'm going to move on. T at or is that tar? Or is it TLDR? Anyway, to be honest, I could not get through this entire movie. It's not well made and... Oh, okay. This entire movie... I think you're not talking about Peaky Blinders. I think you're talking about The Wind That Shakes the Barley. I could not get through. And by the way, if this movie was made in 2006. Yeah, look, now we can see, again, looking back with the eye of what we now know, right? I think it was around 2005, or maybe it was 1995. I don't know. Maybe this put a copper fasten on it. That was a phrase that used to be used a lot by our politicians. In other words, like to put the capstone on something, the final nail in something. Is I think that might have been a lot of propaganda to sort of say, yeah, look, all that's done and dusted, ancient history, we put a lid on it now, end of story, and now we can make movies about it, and they start sort of maybe even reinventing history a little bit and sort of saying that's what happened and it's all put to bed now, you know? Which is why it might be bad, and why I think we can see as well why they might win all these Palm Doors and Cannes Film Festivals and all this sort of stuff and Sundance Festivals and whatever else, do you know what I mean? Although this one anyway is just Palm d'Or and Cannes Film. Right. It's not well made, and certain parts seem to be a postmodern meandering. Exactly. I should have just read your comment. However, there is a scene in this film where post-war reactions and actions taken in a certain country. Right, okay. Not Ireland, but it might begin with the first letter there. Are discussed, and a parallel is made to modern day. Well, look, I'll say this, right? There are many people, both in this country and in the Pale Stone country, who have made the comparison and have said it's the same thing. Whereas in this country, I don't know if people in the Pale Stone country have changed their mind at all, but in this country, those same people who are most fervent about that, and I've said it before, but I think I'll say it again on this. They've always said, you know, Brits out, up the Ra, all this sort of stuff. And they've sort of said our struggle, you know, is the same as the one over there, with and the corresponding sides. Now I think they know that they've been twisted around 180 so much with other opinions that I don't think, at the very least, they are not as steady on that. And all it'll take is them actually being asked in public one day, well, is that what you think? And they'll deny, just like Peter and the cock crowing 3 times. So things have changed, I would expect, in that regard. And certainly the party, I've said this, I think, elsewhere, that it was headed by Gerry Adams, and now I think is still by Mary Lou MacDonald. She's a woman, so obviously she can do no wrong. I don't think that's their position at all, although I don't think that they take questions from their constituency anymore, and they don't want to ever take shouted questions in public either, because they don't want to go near that hot potato now. They're at the trough. They have been at the trough of the same politicians who are in Westminster, and whether it be Stormont in outside of Belfast or thereabouts, and in Dublin. Doesn't matter that there are devolved parliaments like there might be in Wales or Scotland. It's all just different nodes of the same interconnected NODES nodes of the same interconnected sort of pipeline of slush funds and port barrel spending and club that they're all in now. Right, back to this now, where post-war reactions were taking discussed in a parallel, and a parallel is made to modern day. It addresses what you were talking about. Fast forward to the cafe scene about 1/2 to 2/3 of the way through. Haha, that was me responding briefly off the top of my head, and this is me attempting to be as brief as I can and failing. Let me know if you have ever do watch any of these, and whether or not you grew up with a very different interpretation of things. And remember, these were films that were allowed and approved, so they clearly don't cover everything, but they cover more than was covered. Yeah, and the censorship is far more now, of course. Maybe there was half-truths there. There are no truths allowed now. I personally plan on rewatching The Master, I think it's called, with Joaquin, is that how it's pronounced? Joaquin Phoenix, and I didn't know who PSH was, so I had to look it up. It's Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's supposed to be a thinly veiled copy of L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology fame, in case anyone didn't know. It's cloaked in a lot of postmodern script writing and non-linear storytelling. But knowing what I know now, I think I'll see things I didn't catch the first time I viewed it and dismissed it as not worth watching. Isn't that always the way, now that we have eyes to see? Though I shouldn't, and you can follow or agree with what I say or not. We shouldn't get complacent nor arrogant in our ability to see things now with hindsight or otherwise, our perspicacity for the current day ability to, well, as I say, perspicacity or ability to discern one thing from another or see through things or whatever, you know what I mean? Why can't I think of a word I'm trying to think of a word other than perspicacity. Insight. Now, dismissed it as not worth watching. Happy to have found your channel. Nice to meet you, and you too. There was something else that I wanted to say there. Thinly veiled. I won't get into Scientology just now. The Master. Oh yeah, I'll just sort of say I looked it up there. It's got also Amy Adams in it, who I used to think was lovely, but now I think she's probably woke. So, oh no, this is a different Amy Adams. Oh no, maybe it's just the photograph I'm looking at has red hair, and I thought of her as having black hair or something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It tells the story of Freddie Quell Phoenix, a World War II Navy veteran struggling to adjust to a post-war society, who meets Lancaster Dodd Hoffman, the leader of a religious movement known as the Cause. Dodd sees something in Quell and accepts him into the movement. Freddie takes a liking to the Cause and begins traveling with Dodd's family to spread his teachings. Well, I wonder then, is the Freddie character, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is he Jack Parsons, I wonder? Or a thinly veiled version of him? That would confirm it. Anyway, it says here, the film's inspirations were varied. It was partly inspired by Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. So look, it's a matter of what they say is, source needed. Is that what they say? It's a matter of something that they can refer to. Although I don't see a reference here. There is no reference when I look at Wikipedia. So anyway, distributed by the Weinstein Company. Indeed. I've lost my place now. Drunken Navy Stories. Yeah. By early drafts of Anderson's There Will Be Blood. That was made into another movie, wasn't it? Yes, it was, with another Irish guy, Daniel Day-Lewis, famous method actor. The novel by Thomas Pynchon, if that's how you pronounce his name, I don't know. Or Pynchon. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Drunken Navy Stories that Jason Robards had told to Anderson while filming Magnolia. Anyway, and the life story of author John Steinbeck. The Master was shot almost entirely on 65mm film stock, making it the first fiction feature to be shot and released in 70mm since Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet in 1996. I don't know if that was an achievement for late analog movies or not. I don't know. Yeah, I'm wondering whether to read out any more of this, because it could make it even much more longer than it is already. Right, so as we say, he's struggling to deal with post-war. He's working on a farm in California. Elderly colleague collapses after drinking Freddie's homemade moonshine. Freddie flees after being accused of poisoning him. One night, Freddie finds himself in San Francisco. I'm just saying, it reminds me of another movie, but I won't get into it now. A very old movie, before there was talkies, and I didn't know it until I've discovered it recently, but it was part of I think, American founding modern lore, both written and a movie. And I think one of its titles might be just called Greed. But if I finish another sort of video that I've been editing for a while and then left on the draft stage for a while now, to do with the book, or sorry, yeah, I suppose the essay. God, this is again tangent on tangent on tangent, but it was an essay by James Shelby Downard called King Kill, and I think not Philip, but there's another Hoffman guy, but not Philip Seymour. What's his name? I can't think of his first name now, but anyway, I think he likened something to this movie, and I think it's just called Greed. And there's a fellow who dies out in, I think, either New Mexico or the Arizona desert, but he flees from California as well, having been accused of murdering somebody, but I think he did murder somebody. But anyway, and it's from not just California, but flees San Francisco. One night, Freddy. Oh, well, anyway, he's in San Francisco, stows away on the yacht of a follower of Lancaster Dodd, the leader of nascent philosophical movement known as the Cause. When he is discovered, Dodd describes Freddy as aberrated. I'm going to say I'm not exactly 100% sure what that means, but I think it means under the influence of alcohol. And claims he has met him in the past but cannot remember where. Or maybe it's like addled in the mind. Change from what it is. I'm going to have to look up the definition now. Aberrated, characterized by defects, abnormality, or deviation from the usual, typical, or expected course. Okay. And claims he has met him in the past but cannot remember where. He invites Freddy to stay and attend the marriage of his daughter as long as he will make more moonshine, which Dodd has developed a taste for. Dodd begins an exercise with Freddy called processing, in which, oh, well, there's the Scientology thing. It's like, what do they call it? Oh, God. Auditing, in which he asks Freddy a flurry of disturbing psychological questions. Freddy has a flashback to a past relationship with Doris, a young girl from his hometown, to whom he promised one day to return. That's a familiar trope in, I think, US movies and literature, and I'm going to say from either the post-World War II or post-World War One era. Anyway, look, I better wrap it up there because, look, things could go on and on and on, and I said I was going to go back to the Pink Floyd The Wall. I'll leave that till another time. This is very long already, and the longer something is, the more I think somebody might look at it and say, oh, listen, I'm not going to listen to all those ramblings. But look, thanks for your comment, and appreciate it, and I hope that other people as well as you might find it's interesting to listen to